Well, hi, everyone, and welcome again to the Musical Innertube. That guy over there by the microphone is John Timpane.
Hello, folks, and that guy whose voice you just heard was Don Rooney.
And we are talking today to Mike Mitchell. Hi, Mike.
Hello, Don. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and we're glad to have you with us today. Mike is the executive director of the High Center for Family Business at Elizabethtown College in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, which is in Lancaster County. More recently, he's the founder and chairman of a new business venture. It's called Treasures Markets. It's a nonprofit retail, grocery, and general merchandise store located in the middle of a food desert in Lancaster City here in Pennsylvania. Now, prior to starting Treasures, Mike was the owner and president of Amelia's Grocery Outlet. That was a family-owned 15-store chain with over 400 employees. Mike, what are food deserts?
Food deserts are areas in cities usually that do not have access to grocery stores. The one in Lancaster, one point was being serviced by a Giant. Giant moved out of the city and created a food desert. So there is no traditional grocery store within a mile of our location. And, there's 30,000 people live in a mile of there, and they have no access to fresh food.
Now, how can an area with 30,000 people population not support a grocery store? What's the reason that Giant would move out and leave people without an access to fresh foods?
Various reasons. I mean, it's sometimes a difficult area to try to run a store, but also there's not enough space for Giant to run their stores have been upsized to 40, 50,000 square feet. So they don't have the ability to run a traditional size Giant in the city anymore. So it's inconsistent with their new model, and they decide to move out.
Okay, so I'm just wondering about what people do when, let's say they were going to Giant, right? They were customers of Giant. Now, do those people have to find a way to commute to the nearest store? What happens to them, Michael?
It's a challenge. That's why we felt led to, try to bring groceries back to the city because according to our numbers, 40% of them don't have transportation. Mm. So they have to, like you said, they have to either get a ride to go to the grocery store or they have to go to a little corner, convenience store where the food is not the most healthy and it's also not inexpensive. But they're forced to do that because they don't have anywhere else to go. They can't walk to any place that offers discount groceries or fresh food. So it is a problem, that a lot of cities have.
What makes Treasures Market different? How did you arrange that so that you would be able to get around all of these problems that inner cities face?
Well, we created a combination store. I ran Amelia's Grocery Outlets. That was a family business we had, and they were discount grocery stores. So what we do is we buy closeouts from major manufacturers like Kellogg's, Tropicana, Coca-Cola. All these big companies have overstocks, and they don't sell them to the regular stores like Giant and Weiss, but they do sell them to closeout retailers. So we built a very successful business, built 15 stores, eventually sold it to a private equity firm about 10 years ago. And so that's been our experience in delivering discount groceries. So we've, when God put this on my heart to, start this nonprofit, he kind of directed me to the void that now was created by Giant. So we feel we're very well positioned to bring discount groceries at very good prices because we use the same model. We buy closeouts. And then we just took that concept and did the same thing on general merchandise. So we've created deals on clothing, on furniture, on shoes. We also collect thrift donations from folks, and we sell that at the store. So you can not only buy discount groceries and fresh foods, but you can also buy clothing and shoes and furniture.
For a person operating a store like yours, right? You've come in, there's been this problem, you filled the void, but I'm sure it's not that simple. I mean, can you talk about some of the challenges in setting up a store like this? Some of the things that aren't there that usually are there when you set up a grocery store? Because that's what I'm really interested in is there's got to be a lot of I don't know, the sort of the economic environment and support system that you could count on with such a store probably isn't there where you are now. Could you talk about that a little?
Yeah, you need to find the resources to take a store and make it a grocery store, and it's fairly capitally intensive. It's capital intensive to open a grocery store because you not only need to outfit the store, but you need to put a lot of refrigeration and equipment that is very expensive into a store. So we worked with some government agencies and got a new market tax credit, which is designed to help fund some of the store because there are incentives to bring food to food deserts. So that was the first step, and then we took a store, we bought a location and renovated it, and that took quite a bit of work to make it store worthy. And we put in all the equipment, all the refrigeration, all the fixtures, and then you got to stock it. It takes quite a bit of inventory. We've also leased a warehouse as backup, so we can keep extra product in the warehouse. So yeah, it's not an insignificant and it's a very capital intensive project.
One would think that some place like Giant or some other food corporation that has a lot of stores and a lot of muscle would have the equity to be able to do that. You said earlier that they just don't want to open because the store that they would open in that space doesn't conform with any of their other stores. Is that really the only reason? Is that they just can't open up the way they do in the suburbs?
I think that's a big reason because there just isn't a place in the city that you can open up a 50, 60,000 square foot store. And that's their model now. The other thing is that, they are harder to operate. You're operating in low income areas. So shrink and theft is something you got to keep a close eye on. And they don't really have a way to offer discounts in the city. So they're, even when Giant was there, they were operating the store at regular prices. So, but at least they were providing fresh foods and they were providing a food alternative. And so we're hopeful that, we bring this to the community. They are in desperate need. 30,000 people in a 1 mile radius is a lot of people. So we are looking forward to becoming that community store, bringing to them what they're looking for. And, we're trying a new model and it's a nonprofit. So I think all the proceeds that we do make will go back to the community, which is also a unique retail concept.
That's really creative. And I'm wondering, is that being tried elsewhere in the country, the nonprofit model?
I am not aware of. The only thing I've been aware of is it's a place called Daily Table. It was the gentleman who was the president of Trader Joe's is trying something up in Boston. I think he has 3 stores. His are much smaller, but he's trying to bring fresh foods to the city. So he has fresh produce. He's also making prepared foods that they sell in the city, and he is doing nonprofit. But that's the only other nonprofit grocery store that I'm aware of. So again, this is a fairly unique and new concept.
You talked earlier about the problems with theft and being in a low-income area. And let's kind of open up that part of the problem, and that is that where we're talking about food deserts are inner cities, people with low incomes, people with no incomes. When you open a store like Treasures, do you find that the people get behind it a little more than they would a brand name because you're sort of catering to their needs?
Yeah, we're trying to do that. I mean, again, it's new, so we're trying to get to know the neighborhood. But yes, and we're also offering them some things that a regular grocery store can't. For example, we just were donated a truckload of Tropicana orange juice. So instead of selling the Tropicana orange juice, we're giving it away. So if a customer comes in with any purchase, they get 2 half gallons of Tropicana Pure Premium orange juice free. So those are the kind of things that kind of blend the concept of retail and nonprofit. And I think the community will very positively respond to that. As we get donations, they will get donations. And at the same time, they're going to frequent the store more and buy some things. And again, even what they buy, all the profits from what they buy will go back into the community and to feed the hungry and help the homeless. So we partnered with Water Street Rescue Mission. They're one of our big partners. And not only are we trying to provide job opportunities for the hard to employ, but we're also, going to give the money back to the mission so that they can help those that are less fortunate.
Do you find that word of mouth is really important to a store like this?
It is, I think, especially in the city. Yes. I think everybody is a neighbor and knows everybody. It's important to any store, really, to get the buzz going and get people talking about you. But I think it's even more important in a city store because, again, it's more condensed, and the neighbors, a lot of them, have some ethnic pockets. They all know each other, and they can spread the word in a hurry if they like what they see.
Yeah, let's talk about the ethnicity there too. You have different ethnicities in the area, and these people will probably want to come and shop for the foods that they're comfortable with. How do you handle that situation?
We try to cater to that as best we can. We do carry it. There's a large Hispanic population, so we have a lot of Hispanic foods. Some are not obviously on closeout like a lot of the product in our store is, but we'll carry that for their convenience because that is a staple to many of the people in this neighborhood. So we will carry specific items for the community, and then we'll mix that in with, Kellogg's cereals and, Breyer's ice cream and all the things that, we get on closeout. And that's kind of how the concept works. We did that again in Amelia's. We did that too. Some of our stores were not in the city, but near cities. So we were getting city shoppers. And if we were in Hispanic communities, we would carry, a row of Hispanic regular goods for their convenience.
I'm interested too in issues of inventory. I know that many of the things we're talking about rely on sources that are sort of, they're pulsed or cyclical or lumpy. And I was just wondering how you smooth that out.
Yeah, that's the challenge of closeout. You're at the mercy of what's available on closeout. We smooth it out one way by having a warehouse so that we can forward buy because you can't buy just in time. I mean, you got to buy the closeout when it's available, and you don't know when the next one's going to be. So you do carry a little more inventory than the traditional grocer who just orders off for the shelf and then orders again the next day. So you smooth it out that way, and then you smooth it out with relationships and contacts, and that's the benefit. A lot of the people that I've hired for this project were former Amelia's employees, so they have connections as well as experience in retail for closeout groceries. So that's been a big plus.
Going back to something John said earlier, do you think this nonprofit model where a lot of the food is donated, a lot of the initial startup costs are funded by different agencies and that sort of thing, is that a model that's going to be successful in getting grocery stores in inner cities and sustaining them once they're there?
We hope so, Don. That's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to find a way to keep grocery stores in the city. The other reason is, I think there's more people moving back into the city. Your millennials, and it's popular, especially in Lancaster. They're creating a lot of nice housing in the city. So there's a need for stores that aren't there, and we're trying to figure that model out. I think this is a great opportunity for expansion. We're looking at this as a prototype and then looking to open more. So once we perfect exactly, how to do this in the best manner possible, we are hoping that we can bring more stores to food deserts.
Yes, I have to say that I went about 20 years between visits to Lancaster, and I last visited 4 years ago, and I was astonished by the change in the town. It's become an arts venue to some extent. The new housing and also the young folks on the street, that was different for me. That was a different Lancaster. So we're talking about a city that is undergoing an identity change in some ways. I think you feel that, correct? I mean, that's part of what's happening here.
No question. It's got a contemporary, younger vibe to it now. It's also a popular tourist destination, so a lot of restaurants and nightclubs and things have popped up in Lancaster, and that again attracts more people to live in the city because there's more restaurants and nightclubs. So and then they've been renovating a lot of the properties to make them more accommodating. So yeah, I think the inner city store is not just for the folks who maybe under the poverty level, but it's also for anybody who lives in a city. And it's the convenience of being within a mile of your house. You can run over and grab, even if you just come in we have produce, we have fresh meats, we have a full dairy, snacks. So it's all at really good prices. That's the other thing. We're trying to bring good prices into the city. And I think this is a good format to do that.
As cities go through gentrification and get more millennials to come in and do more reimagining of a downtown area, do you see that you're going to get some competition that Giant thinks, well, maybe we can do some sort of a smaller scale thing and get in where these people are moving in?
I'm sure somebody's looking at it. I mean, Walmart's looking at neighborhood stores, and there is a Save-A-Lot downtown. I mean, it's not within a mile of us, but so there are other people trying to figure it out. But it would probably be done on a smaller scale because you just can't do a 40 to 50,000 square foot store. That's where Walmart neighborhood stores are 25 to 30. They're not real big in this area yet. But yeah, there's always competition out there. I think the benefit of what we have is closeout is really hard to compete with. We can compete with Walmart and Giant, on pricing because of the way we buy. We're buying closeouts, so we can offer great value. I think the other thing that I'm interested in, and this is unique because we didn't have this in Amelia's, is the whole thrift and closeout side on the clothing. Like we bought out a whole Sears store. So we had appliances, we had clothing, we had, Sears was closing a store during COVID and they could not liquidate. So they called us and said, hey, you want to take the whole store? We'll give it to you for a really nice price. And so we had a warehouse, we could do that. And so we have a whole Sears store.
That's incredible. Wait a minute. So just to make sure I heard you correctly, Sears called you up and said, hi, would you like to buy a Sears?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, how we had the contact was we were closing out some Kmart's. Kmart's were going out of business. So they closed several of them in this area, and we made a connection with them and said, hey, look, we'll take your inventory. Actually, we actually bought some fixtures. They had a great deal on fixtures, so we got great prices to outfit our store. But it was merchandise. We were buying closeout merchandise. Now, that was after they had liquidated. So they would go to 50% off, then 60% off, then 70% off. And then what they had left, they would, sell to us. So we knew them. And during that time, Kmart and Sears are obviously owned by the same company. So that's when COVID hit. And they had a Sears store in Baltimore that they were planning to liquidate. They were going to go to 50% to 60% to 70% off, and they couldn't open. So they still wanted to get out of the store, and we had a contact with them from Kmart's, and they knew what we were doing. So they said, hey, this is a little bigger purchase, but would you like to buy the whole Sears store? And, we were having a little more trouble collecting thrift at that time because people weren't, feeling safe to come out and donate goods. So It worked out perfectly. We bought, and we still do that. We bought closeouts from Overstock.com, from some of these distributors. There's a lot of e-commerce out there, right. And these warehouses have a lot of stuff that they can't sell, and they sell it to us at significant discounts, and then we we sell it in our store. So we have some new things, we have some donated things, and it's a really cool concept. And I think that will make us unique too, and tough to compete against.
Interesting.
Now, I know you have a warehouse to keep all of your overstock, but you were talking about Giant moving out because they couldn't get a big enough place, and yet you're talking about a store that has groceries and furniture and clothing. How big are you? How big is Treasures, and how big of a space do you need?
We have a 30,000 square foot building, which isn't isn't a giant size, like a Giant store or a Wegmans, or 100,000 square feet. But 30,000 is a good size. So we run about half of it as grocery and half of it as general merchandise. So in a sense, it's kind of like a mini Walmart, and that's a lot of space in in the city. And you ask about what if somebody wants to compete? You cannot come in and find commercial space of 30,000 square feet very easily. There just isn't enough zoning for commercial space. So if this is something somebody saw and said, hey, you know what, I want to go in and get a piece of that, good luck. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like in the suburbs where you can find another strip center right nearby. The city does not have a lot of large commercial properties to do retail. So
How did you find yours? How did you find that 30,000?
well, what I tried to do first is buy the Giant, and we contacted Giant, and at first they were talking about maybe they'll sell it to us. They didn't want another grocer there because they have another store, a couple miles from there. But we were kind of a closeout grocer, so they were talking to us, and then they got a new president, and he decided he wanted to turn it into a Giant to-go warehouse. So basically, they took their retail store and turned it into a store where they pick for e-commerce. So you can't really walk in and shop. You really probably don't even walk in and get your groceries. It's more they park their trucks. People go in and pick the e-commerce orders, and then they load them onto trucks and they deliver them to people.
Right.
Now, that was frustrating to me because that doesn't help the people in the neighborhood. It helps the people in the suburbs who are ordering on e-commerce. So anyway, they wouldn't sell that building. So we still felt inclined to try to get a store in there. So we found this other property that was only about 3 blocks away. It's right beside McCaskey High School. It was a former farmer's supply store. So it was the perfect location, perfect size, and was comparable to the size of the Giant. And so that's where we kind of moved in and kind of turned it into a retail store for Treasures.
Michael, from some of your earlier comments, I could tell that, of course, you're a businessman. Of course, you understand the marketplace and you understand the business space that you're in. But there also seems to be a great degree of social and humanitarian awareness. I'm wondering, can you talk about where that came from in your life? Where'd you get those values and those aims?
Well, it usually comes from family and parents, and my parents were Christian parents who were very giving and focused on giving back. So it started at a young age, and then the older you get, the more you realize the blessings you have, and you want to share those with other people, and it's very rewarding to have the opportunity to do that. And I am in regular conversations with God and what He wants me to do and how He wants me to live, and that's kind of how this got put on my heart. He it's His idea. He gave it to me one day when I was at worship at church and said, I want you to open a grocery and closeout store, a thrift store. And I was like, wow, I didn't really want to do that. I was executive director at the High Center. I liked that job. But when you're asked to do things, you're not always asked to do easy things. And I tried to avoid it actually for a couple years, but He kept putting people and circumstances in my way. One of those was the Social Enterprise Institute at Elizabethtown. I was a director of the High Center, which is, I work with a lot of family businesses, but they just started a Social Enterprise Institute. There's a gentleman named Jim Reeb there, And he stopped down one day and said, "Hey, Mike, do you have any ideas for social enterprises?" And it was finally God's way of putting it right in front of me. So I told him about it. He loved it. So I finally wrote a business plan to see that it would work, and it really looked good. So that's kind of how I got started. Yeah, it's God puts things on your heart, and then He uses your head to verify that it's the direction you should go.
Let's talk a little bit about the High Center for Family Business at the college at Elizabethtown College. What is that, and what do you guys do?
Yeah, the High Center is a place where family businesses could go to learn more about how to run a family business. So it's expanded over the years. I've been here about 10 years. We have about 130 companies from all different sizes, to up to the sizes of Her Foods and Four Seasons Produce, some larger companies, and we basically provide education. We bring in top speakers. We have Jim Collins coming in March. We have Simon Sinek coming. We've had John Maxwell. We've had Patrick Lencioni. So we bring in very talented business people and authors to speak to our groups. We have peer groups where they get together in groups of 8 or 10 and process issues that they're having in their business or with the family or with succession. So yeah, those are the kind of things that we do. We have a best practices survey, so we go out and survey the executive team on best practices that they may or may not be using in their business, and then we help them understand which ones they want to implement and help them implement best practices so that they can run their businesses in a more healthy way.
It seems like family businesses, we're always being told that small businesses, mom and pops, if you will, are the backbone of the economy. With your experience with family businesses, how true is that? And how true is that in an ongoing fashion as we plow through this COVID and see businesses closing? How important is it to keep those family businesses going?
It's very important. I think, they are the backbone, and the numbers show that about 75% to 80% of businesses are privately held, which means they're ultimately family-owned businesses. So it's very important, and it's very important to help them scale. I think that's what we try to do. When you start a business, it's usually an entrepreneur and a handful of people, and then all of a sudden, if they have a good business model, it takes off. But sometimes the entrepreneur is not doesn't gravitate to best practices to scale the business. They just try.
Not a business savvy person.
They're smart. They're business. They may be a great salesperson, a great engineer, have a lot of skills, but they're not traditional business people who, understand as much about strategic planning, finance, maybe to be able to scale. And that's where we step in. And we say, look, you got a great model here. Let's take it to the next level. And and sometimes it's not even the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur says, well, I don't want to do that, but I'll hire a president who can do that. And I want to keep being the salesman, or I want to keep being the engineer. And that's what really helps create value, not only for the owner, but for society. So we try to take those mom and pops that have a lot of potential and turn them into, a medium-sized business. And if they have potential, keep going. And that's been very rewarding for me as well as for our businesses, because we're providing a map for them to get to the next level.
It may be too early to talk about this, but are you seeing any patterns in the way that your clientele are buying things? Do you see stuff that's going on that's interesting, or you want to look more into? I'm wondering if you're seeing anything just generally.
Yeah, we're starting to develop patterns. We've been open now about 7 weeks. So we track, every department and every purchase. So we're seeing, they're buying about 75% of it is groceries, which is not uncommon. That's what people come in for regularly. 25% of it is general merchandise. I think that general merchandise will grow a little bit. But yes, we're starting to see patterns, and we're starting to see regular customers, and that's what we like to see. This is really there'll be people from the suburbs coming in to buy things occasionally and to buy some of our clothing and furniture, but we really want this to be the neighborhood store where people are coming in 2-3 times a week and getting the fresh foods they need.
People tend to vote with their dollars, if you will. Do you have a pretty good clientele coming in there? Can you tell just from the sales that people are accepting your model and working with it?
We do. We have a very good average purchase. So they're coming in and they're buying a good quantity of things. We don't have as many people who've discovered us yet. It's hard, it's hard when you have a new concept and you have no brand recognition right away. And it's also hard in COVID to really get people to experiment with some new things. They kind of are in their habits, but we're building customer counts, and the customers that are coming are giving us very good reviews, and they're buying products. So yes, I think we're off to a great start, and we look to continue to get more people to discover us.
What about expansion? You went up to 15 stores when you started Amelia's. Are there going to be more Treasure stores in more cities?
Yeah, we have the financial backing, and we certainly have an experienced team that ran those 15 stores. So we're very well positioned to open multiple stores. In fact, that was the plan from the beginning. We wouldn't lease a warehouse and hire the A team if we were only going to run one store. So we do look to expand. We just want to make sure that we got the model well defined before we do that. So it's going to take a few months to kind of, see, like you said, see what's selling, see what the neighbors are looking for, and make the store as customized to their needs as possible, and to learn, it's a new business model. So just how does this work, and how do we, source and find things that the neighbors need. And then I think once we have that, we can move much more quickly at store 2, 3.
Let's see if we can get you to put on your Swami hat for a second and do a little predicting. We've talked about a lot of different ways that the grocery business is going now with e-commerce, with some retailers willing to scale down like Walmart and having neighborhood stores, and the sort of situation that you're finding yourself in with Treasures. Is the whole grocery model changing in ways that we can't even see right now?
Well, I think, COVID has definitely pushed people to accelerate the e-commerce. But even so, e-commerce is only, most 10 to 15% of most categories. So it's still predominantly a retail market for groceries. And even after COVID, I'm not sure it'll stay that high. It might, but it's not for the city or for the people looking for discounts. It's just not as economical as going out to the grocery store and, buying all the different type of items you need and getting them at a discount because you're not shipping everything there. Also, there are logistic issues with shipping perishables and frozen and produce and all those things that go with groceries. So people have been working on this for years, decades, to try to get online grocery shopping to be perfected. Now they are making some strides, so it will continue to grow. I'm not denying that. But I think there will always be a need for folks who are trying to stretch their dollar, and there's no better way to do that than to run a discount store where people can come save money that they'll have to drive. They're not looking for all the convenience of e-commerce, but they're also not going to pay the price that they're paying for e-commerce. I think the last retail that will ever disappear would be a discount grocer, because it's not easy to ship and do e-commerce in grocery, and you can't get the discount prices in e-grocery.
The concept of food deserts, I worked in Philadelphia for a couple of decades, and as I don't need to tell Mike, we talked about so many areas in a city like Philly, which was once a city where you woke up and you walked to your job, and there were, lots of different ethnic neighborhoods. And then there was white flight, and it left the shell of a city in some ways. And suddenly you had all these areas where it was hard to find a grocery store, hard to find Drugstores, that's still an issue. Both are still an issue. And you associate it with these changes that really took place in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, leaving people in the lurch in some ways. There was a class thing, there was a race thing, in a lot of ways, an ethnic thing. There was a lot of different reasons. And you're really you're looking now at a model. You've created a model that seems to say, well, we're changing more. We're going in new directions. The model you're trying to do, the nonprofit one, is so novel.
Yeah, I think it's the best way to try to reach difficult environments for grocery. I can't think of a better way, and we're going to give it the old college try. It's we've got a lot of help from the community, from Water Street Mission, from the High Foundation, who's been a donor. So it takes a team. It takes a community to solve some community issues, and so I'm very excited that I couldn't do this alone by any stretch of the imagination, and the communities come together to help the community. And once it's up and running and hitting its stride, it's so nice, because even the people who shop there are going to be helping the community, whether they know it or not, because all the proceeds are going to go back to organizations that will feed the community even more. So I'm anxious to see where it goes.
Well, Mike, if somebody wanted to learn more about Treasures Market or about the High Center for Family Business, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, we have a website for Treasures Markets. It's treasuresmarkets.com. And we have a website for the High Center. It's thehighcenter.com. So they could go on there, and my contact information is all on there. We also have a Facebook page for Treasures Markets, so you can find us on Facebook and find see all kind of videos and pictures and specials, and keep in touch with everything that's going on at the store.
All right, Mike, thanks very much for talking with us today. Good luck with Treasures Markets.
Well, we wish you the best. Thank you so much.
It sounds like a great idea, and hopefully it'll take off, and you'll have a lot more treasures to talk about in the near future.
Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you.
And thank you for listening to the Musical Innertube. If you'd like to get in touch with us, our email address is musicalinnertube, all one word, @gmail.com. We're also on Twitter, @JTimPayne and @DonRooney9. We're on Facebook, Apple iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeart Podcasts. Feel free to like us and give us a good review on any of those platforms. Our webpage is Musical Innertube. That's musical spelled with 2 A's, MUSICAAL, Innertube, all one word, .libsyn, spelled LIBSYN.com. And thanks, as always, to the virtual band Car Radio Dog for providing our theme music.